The world's largest banks are on the brink of collapse, threatening the very foundation of the global economy. Economists are predicting an imminent bankruptcy for the bank within the next year. Even renowned financial giants like Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs have not been immune to the crisis. Morgan Stanley recently shut down one of its companies, incurring a loss of over $900 million, while Goldman Sachs has had to lay off hundreds of its employees. Now, beware as we're going to share with you the harrowing story of these colossal banks. Stay tuned till the end as we recount the reasons for their downfall. Institutions that once stood tall as pillars of the West's financial system are now crumbling. In a recent example, Credit Suisse was forced to restructure after suffering a staggering 50% loss in stock value in just 1 year. The situation is no different for Deutsche Bank, which is facing significant losses with its stock plummeting by over 25% in recent months. The gravity of the situation cannot be overstated, and urgent measures are required to prevent the total collapse of the global banking industry. Apparently, the big banks are having a major meltdown, and it's all because of something called CDOs, which stands for Collateralized Debt Obligations. Normally, these CDO things are a pretty good investment. It's like getting a whole bunch of debts in one neat little package, kind of like a debt grab bag, and as long as most of those debts get paid back, the value of the package stays nice and high. But as you can probably guess, things can get ugly really fast if most of those debts go bad, and that's exactly what's happening right now. So the banks are in a bit of a pickle because they put all their eggs in one CDO basket. It's like they took a gamble and lost big time, kind of like playing Russian roulette with your finances. Now let's take a ride down memory lane to the time when investment banks were playing hot potato with our money. Before the economy took a nosedive, these banks were like, oh yeah, these financial products are gonna be a gold mine. We'll make a bank. But then something crazy happened. People started questioning whether these debts were actually stable or if they were just a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. Instead of addressing these concerns, the banks were like, money, 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 and they just kept investing in these sketchy CDOs. They were even creating them out of thin air and filling them with bad loans. Before we knew it, we had a debt bubble the size of a hot air balloon, and it was about to burst. And then it did burst. It was like a piñata filled with disappointment and despair. The Great Recession hit and we were all left wondering what the heck just happened. But here's the kicker. These banks were so greedy that they didn't even care that they were playing with fire. They were like a live hand grenade just waiting to go off. But why did they keep going, you might ask? Well, the CDO market was worth over $200 billion, which meant huge bonuses for the executives. And let's be real, when you're dangling that much money in front of people, they tend to turn a blind eye to the risk. You'd think they would have learned their lesson by now, but nope. The allure of big bucks is just too strong. Time and again, the big guns of the banking industry have displayed their willingness to exploit any profitable opportunity without batting an eye toward the potential aftermath. However, what left the masses dumbfounded was the unforeseen collapse of these banking behemoths before the much talked about 2008 financial crisis. The very same banks that were deemed too big to fail were now being compared to the ill-fated Titanic. The mere thought of their potential failure was beyond imagination. The collapse of Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns shook the very foundations of the financial world, creating a crisis that was unprecedented. Despite this, it seems that the privileged few atop the banking food chain have failed to absorb any lessons from the past. The consequences of the situation are dire, and the taxpayers are the ones who bear the brunt of it all. And to make matters worse, the very products that caused the financial crash of 2008 are back with a vengeance. The CDO market is booming. It's expected to soar to over $185 billion by 2026, almost back to its 2008 levels. But there's an even more troubling development on the horizon. Synthetic CDOs are also on the rise at an alarming pace. Let me explain. With synthetic CDOs, banks bet on the value of CDOs, effectively gambling with other people's money. Investment banks can place even more money on the same CDOs, creating a towering house of cards that could come crashing down at any moment. And when it all falls apart, the banks' losses are multiplied. Synthetic CDOs were some of the most destructive assets in the financial crisis, and yet they're on track to quadruple this year, rising to an eye-popping $40 billion. With numbers like these, it's no surprise that major banks are teetering on the brink of collapse. Once upon a time, Credit Suisse was at the center of the colossal scandal that rocked the financial world. The drama unfolded in Mozambique, where Credit Suisse had brokered some seemingly innocuous investments in the country's fishing industry. However, things quickly went south and the bank found itself embroiled in a slippery slope of corruption. Despite being marketed as an effort to boost Mozambique's economy and create jobs, the loans ended up totaling over a whopping $1.3 billion, leaving one of the world's poorest countries in a dire financial situation. Credit Suisse learned the hard way that even small decisions can have colossal consequences. It seemed like a dream come true, but with all good things, there was a catch. A large chunk of the funds never made it to where they were supposed to go, thanks to corrupt officials in Mozambique's government who had sticky fingers. To make matters worse, the bankers involved weren't exactly saints either. They took around $50 million in kickbacks and commissions, while the country's economy took a nosedive. Despite being slapped with a heavy fine, the bankers didn't seem to learn their lesson and continued to be embroiled in one scandal after another. It was a sad state of affairs that left many wondering if greed was worth ruining the lives of all those living in extreme poverty. Let us tell you, one of the world's largest investment banks has been slapped with a $400 million fine for its reckless and dangerous business practices. Despite receiving a massive bailout from taxpayers following the 2008 crash, this bank neglected risk management and made a series of costly blunders, including accidentally sending a company $900 million more than they were meant to. As a result, they fired their CEO and pledged to invest $1 billion more into risk management services. However, the damage had already been done, and every day working people and their own companies suffered the consequences. This is just another example of how these investment banks are showing themselves to be incompetent and dangerous, and why people are pulling out of them during this recession. The astronomical amount of money they've been leaking to fines and penalties is unacceptable, and they get away with it because they can usually afford it. Another point that couldn't be overlooked is that the world economy is reeling from the colossal impact of the pandemic, a crisis that has sent shockwaves through every sector, including the banking industry. Investment banks, in particular, have taken a severe hit and are feeling the sting of the recession. In the last year, investment banking revenue has plummeted by a staggering 38%, marking a significant decline for this once booming market. The global recession has caused people to lose confidence in the banks, leading to a decline in the use of their services. Even companies are hesitant to go public in such an unstable market, further chipping away their banks' profits. It's a storm that JP Morgan CEO aptly describes as a coming hurricane, and sadly not all banks are likely to survive. JP Morgan isn't the only bank feeling the brunt of the storm. Others are also struggling to stay afloat. Deutsche Bank, for example, is on the verge of collapse, with its valuation plummeting by 15% in just 1 year. Credits used, for example, are now being subjected to an emergency restructuring to counteract the massive losses. The banking industry is indeed facing some daunting challenges, with the possibility of a few houses of cards tumbling down. Overall, it's quite concerning to learn about what's going on beneath the surface, isn't it? The more we delve into it, the more we realize just how deep this rabbit hole really is. It's alarming to think that the banks have placed themselves at such a high level of risk. We need to pay close attention to this situation, as the sufferers will be us also. And that's a wrap. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like this video. See you in the next one, and until then, peace.